Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Untitled Reviews. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Bear, Season 2, Episode 6. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I was taken aback when I saw how long this episode is. I was like, that's wild. This is probably the most, there's fun to this episode, but this is the most, ticking time bomb episode so far in its entire show. It is the most stressful because you're like, things are going to hit the fan. I just don't know when. And obviously they waited to the end of the episode to make everything literally explode because everything was boiling the entire time. And then you just finally boiled over till everything just went boom. This is the episode of, hey, let's bring out the star-studded cast for this episode. Because every time you turned around in this episode, there was someone else that says, oh, okay, weird. Bob Odenkirk. Oh, okay. John Mulaney, Sarah Paulson, Jamie Lee Curtis, freaking Gillian Jacobs. I was like, dude, every time you're turning around, that was to me just the wildest thing. And it's just this family get together, which everyone's just barely holding it together. Natalie is worried about their mom, which Mike and Carmen are like, stop asking her if she's okay. Specifically, Mike was like, do not ask her if she's okay. She's at she's at a 4 right now. At least she's not at a 6. Let me and Carm handle it. And she's like, yeah, you and Carm will handle it by doing nothing. He's like, exactly. By us not, it's one of those things of avoidance. If you kind of ignore something, as long as you don't poke the bear, it's fine. I know, ironic enough to kind of say the bear, considering what the bear, bears come up periodically throughout this whole situation. But their mom, we don't know what her situation is. I mean, this is our first time for one to get in and see a lot of the extended family, but this is also our first time getting to see their mom, because they kind of danced around the mom subject over the course of the show so far, and so we kind of see her, and I don't know what that is if it's it feels like that. I mean, and I'm no medical expert. That feels like that might be a bipolar disorder. The way she and it just, she seems very manic, which almost makes you wonder, is that, I mean, that type of stuff is hereditary. So you kind of also look at their family and you're like, I can see why Carmen's kind of messed up the way he is. I can see the way Mike, I mean, I'm not trying to put that all on her, but I feel like it's a contributing factor on top of other, it's a baseline thing that maybe other contributing factors of the respective, Carmen's life choice going down, the chef route, kind of added on top of that, kind of made him the dysfunctional person he is. Mike, that being the baseline, sprinkle in just the challenges of life not working out the way you do, having it constantly thrown in his face this episode, that first by Carmen, but then later on Lee, that he never finishes anything, which even Jimmy was like, it is kind of true about you, Mike. So Dad, and you even had this moment when he was talking to Carmen, where Carmen showed him hey, this is what we could build together. He's like, it's beautiful, Carmen. And you see him kind of slapping himself. And then next thing we see him, he's kind of wrapped in a blanket. I'm like, is he coming down from something? It's no, he got high. It was stressing him out because I mean, why does anyone do drugs? It's just, usually it's a form of escapism. So the stresses of life, and just, I think he's sad, and he's the one kind of doing everything he can to kind of hold his family together. And he's barely holding himself together, because it's here I am. And once again, it's just, it's so interesting because you're seeing Mike kind of breaking down, but he's putting up more of a front than their mom is, because their mom is just kind of, she's high and she's low, constantly she's on a roller coaster the entire episode. Being, and it's very symbolically represented by the kitchen, the state the kitchen's in. It's all right, got to take this out in a couple minutes, then I got to take that out, put this in for a little bit. I have all these timers set. Carmen, you got to remember to do this, tell me to do this, or do this for me. And Natalie, who wants to help out, it's what do you need, Mom? Repeatedly they asked her, Natalie, do not ask Mom if she's okay. And she did it anyway. And Carmen was immediately hey, can you get paper towels from the garage? Because he was trying to, I want you to stop right there. Natalie, stop using the okay. Stop using the O word. Stop asking her if she's okay. So, but obviously she's not, because I said, she's very manic and just yelling at Carmen, because he had made this snide remark of I didn't even want to be here. And they're like, whoa, why would you even say that? It's Christmas, it's family, we're supposed to get together. Even later on, his mom is I literally had to beg you to come home. And it's kind of see why, like, it seems like this is a yearly thing of like, yeah, Donna's gonna snap. It seems like this year was the worst one, which now you're like, this seems to have had such a massively trickle down effect. Because I don't think this was just. I was under the assumption this was like the place that they were going to for like both Natalie and Carmen. I thought that the place that they were going to, like, you know, the AA, what was it? The place for like people who have people in their lives who have vices. I thought that was all about Mike, but I'm assuming it stems from that maybe Carmen went because of Mike, but maybe Natalie first went, maybe not because of Mike, maybe eventually went also because of Mike, but maybe it was initially for her mom. Like, this might have been before she even went, you know? Because I think it kind of speaks volumes, like, what color is her hair right now? She's a brunette right now, and instead of, like, obviously where she is present day, she's a blonde. I mean, it feels like that might have been her trying to, like, relieve herself and kind of make some changes for the more positive. Maybe that's what it is. I just think that feels like that's kind of an important detail of like, oh, she's a brunette here instead of like the blonde that she is present day. So that maybe that was kind of part of her therapeutic process, was just kind of like changing a lot of stuff about herself and the way she kind of like handled things when it came to her family. And it feels like Natalie has always, like I said Mike was the one who kind of holds things together. I think Natalie tries to be that glue, but no one wants her to be, because they feel like, yeah, you're like, you want to talk things through. It's like, we're not the talk things through family. We're the avoid things until they erupt. That's kind of our shtick. That's kind of this entire family, not just their mom, Carmen, Mike, and Natalie. It feels like the entire family, cousins and uncles included, are like that. Obviously, because I think they say like at the beginning, I was like, oh, this is what, 256 weeks before opening, which kind of confused me, because I was like, because Richie and Tiff, which I was surprised by, like, oh, Gillian Jacobs is playing Tiff. Interesting. Their daughter hasn't even been born yet. Tiff is currently pregnant with her, which kind of seeing the moments between them is kind of sad, because we've only seen like the flip side of their relationship, because we've never actually seen Tiff on screen. We've just like had like, you know, like Richie's interactions with her through their daughter, and just like when he tried to lead that message for her. Was it the season finale, or was it the second before last episode? I can't remember. It might have been the season finale, I believe. Like that's our only like real interaction with Tiff in that capacity. So kind of seemed like the really sweet, loving relationship they had, because it's like, oh, we're trying to figure stuff out. Do you think our daughter's gonna like us? And even Tiff's like, I don't know. And just seeing that coddling and beautiful. I mean, I maybe that feels almost indicative of something too. That it's like, right, Tiff is there like kind of coddling and holding Richie, who already feels so lost present day, but he was at a point in time where he was trying to figure things out, but was kind of lost. And now we're just seeing how he got lost even more, especially because where things are between him, like just to see where things between him and Tiff are now. Then also he no longer has Mike, and so much is changing. It feels like he's losing the connect. Like the only place he really had anymore was beef, even though back then he wanted to like move away from beef. He didn't want to, like, you know, come home covered in grease from food and stuff, his hands smelling like grease. He tried to go to Jimmy for a job opportunity, which he kind of already made Tiff think he already had the job, which good on Jimmy for backing him in that. It's like, I got you in that, you know, because it's like, right, I approached you trying to dance around the fact is I want to get a job, one that I could, you know, I can learn the business side of things, handle things just kind of like you do, Jimmy. I don't want to work at beef forever. And the fact is he's saying that kind of behind Mike's back, I think speaks volume. And I wonder on some level, is that why Richie kind of like holds on so much to what beef is? Because he wanted to walk away at some point in time, but despite all of that, this is all he has, because, you know, as he's constantly having thrown it in his face, he doesn't really have any other skills. And so obviously the thing of working with Jimmy didn't pan out, or maybe that's a reference to something that we learned earlier in the show and I'm just not remembering off the top of my head, but it's just like that just never panned out, which I'm sure that led to some issues between him and Tiff as well. But it's like, yeah, because Jimmy has like a very interesting relationship with that entire family, but specifically Richie. It's like there's a very strong love-hate relationship they have going on. I feel like he likes Sugar and Carmen way more than he does Richie. To be fair, like Richie has that effect on everybody. This is also the point where like people are still kind of like cracking on Carmen for like going off to Copenhagen and becoming like this. I think it's interesting too, like all the stuff he's talking about, what he's did is like, oh, I'm feeding an invisible cat on a boat. It's the most beautiful place. It's like the exact parallel of what Marcus will say eventually down the road. Obviously, in episode 4 when he went to Copenhagen. So I thought that was kind of neat that having the exact same experience and stuff. I mean that's also why Carmen probably didn't realize he was going to have the exact experience, but I do like that parallel, and we do see that Marcus has grown because of that, and I'm sure Carmen did as well. But yeah, like everyone's cracking jokes about him going off and being so fancy because him and Michelle had this really interesting conversation where she's like, hey, want to go back to New York? It's kind of crazy here. You could live with me. I could have some, I own so many restaurants because, I'm kind of stupid about that. But it's like, yeah, you could, stay with me and you could like decompress because this isn't good for your health. This actually isn't good for anyone, but especially you. Because I guess it's like Carmen kind of got out. No one else did. It's like, right, Mike is still here. Natalie's still here. Like, because they're the ones that have to deal with Donna on a regular basis. They kind of have to be they have to be surrounded with that like so often. They are only around like once a year. So it's when they kind of get it. And that's probably like, I don't know if that's the worst of it. Who knows what Donna's really like on a day-to-day basis. But I think it's probably manageable on a day-to-day basis. Some days are probably worse than others, but probably in a stressful situation like that, which almost feels poetic that Carmen would pick like such a stressful, Mike would go in the restaurant business and that Carmen would become a chef. Like they would pick the most stressful environments considering their personal lives are already so stressful when it comes to their mom. But Carmen was kind of listening to Michelle, and I think for him it's just like, he understood where she was coming from. She was trying to look out for him, but I think at the same time, he doesn't want to feel like, oh, like you're kind of saying like, oh, my mom's an issue. Like, I get it, but I also don't appreciate her kind of being labeled like treated like she's crazy. Like they do kind of have to walk on pins and needles, and I think it's just, I think for Carmen, he doesn't want to feel like he's abandoning his family again because it is such a thing of like, oh, they kind of had to do a lot to get him to come back here. And there is some part of him that didn't want to come back, but now that he is here, seeing how bad his mom is, how bad things can get, he already knew how bad they can get, how bad things are. But I think it's just, he wanted to try and alleviate that. He wanted to do everything he can, especially because his mom feels like no matter what I do, I make beautiful stuff, but no one ever does anything for me. No one wants to lift a finger for me, but it's like, everyone's offering to help, but she's the one shooing everyone away. I don't know whether she's not remembering. Like I said, I think she's just like so all over the place. I don't think she's legitimately, because we do see moments where it does seem like she's losing her memory because she's like, oh, I told you to get the pot. He's like, when did you tell me? She's like, I told you to get the pot. It's like, okay, see, I got the pot. She's like, thank you for listening to me. Why won't anyone listen to me? It's just everyone's trying, but once again, everyone's trying to be on pins and needles and not trying to ask if she is okay, because clearly she's not okay. It's like, we don't need to ask because we can all, literally everyone, no one is confused about it. So that's what makes it even more effed up when Natalie does ask her again if she's okay. It's just like, we all know she's not. And it is that thing of when you do ask people if they're okay, like, they'll also lie to you more often than not. I don't think, maybe that's, me talking from my own personal experience and just talking for myself and not anyone else in particular. But it's like, I don't always tell people honestly when people are like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Like, I'll always, that's my, like, I don't want to talk about it, leave me alone type of situation. That's my, like, brushing you off of like, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, sure, it's fine. I'm okay. It's just my natural default response. I don't want to, I rarely be like, oh, I'm good. And even when I do, like 70% of the time, I'm kind of lying because I'm like, But, rather than explaining why I'm I'm just going to be like, yeah, I'm fine. Because it's just easier and quicker just to move along with the conversation, I meant to bring this up earlier with the whole Carmen and Mike thing, because Carmen had brought up something we already learned earlier in the show about he had issues with when it came to Mike, that he wanted to work at the restaurant with Mike, but it never worked out because Mike Mike knew what that situation was. I think it's that thing of you kind of live enough with yourself. You know who you are. Like, oh, I don't finish things. It's that thing of you could say all these terrible things about yourself, believe all these terrible things about yourself, beat yourself down. But the moment someone else points it out, it cuts even deeper when it comes to your own insecurities. So Mike, I think everything Lee is saying to him, he already feels like that on a regular basis. He already thinks about himself in that way. But having Lee out of anyone else say that rubs him the wrong way. It's like I said, things cut deeper when it's like when your own insecurities are thrown out at you by someone else. That makes them cut like 1,000 times deeper than anything that you could ever say to yourself. I think that's kind of what that is. And it is the thing of, we know the restaurant was sinking. It was not a good play. And that's why I think from Mike, he wanted to push Carmen away. He said, no, yeah. Like he kept kind of being like, yeah-ing about it. But it's like he wanted Carmen to be out there and be free. Like, nah, man, working with me is kind of a mess. And I'm kind of a mess. And I'm going to mess you up, bro, if you are stuck with me. So I want to kind of let you go, spread your wings. And it's just, I think, seeing the picture of like what eventually the Bears go to be, it really like cut him even deeper of like, I think maybe it's like he's happy, but he's like, even though I'm happy, why don't I feel happy? Like I said, there's just a lot there, and Mike's not very good at, and it's actually something, and maybe that on some deeper level, that's something him and Richie connect about. I should also note, I'm a complete note idiot. I can recognize it in my head of like, oh yeah, Eben and John worked on Punisher. I even heard someone be like, oh yeah, maybe that's how Mike is on, that's how John Bernthal is on the Bears, because of the whole him and Eben connect, because of working on Punisher. But it literally didn't click in my head, even though I've heard people say that. For whatever reason, it didn't even click in my head. I was like, oh yeah, Micro and Frank Castle are in the same scene right now, sitting in it. It wasn't literally to the end of the episode where I was like, oh, why didn't I ever connect that together? Like, I've heard people talk about it, but for whatever reason, when I'm watching the show, it never connected. I mean, to be fair, this is only like the second time we've really seen Mike throughout the show, but it's still a thing of, I don't know why that still never clicked anytime Richie's referenced Mike in any capacity, why I never thought like, oh yeah, funny, Micro and, like, I don't even think that the first episode they popped up in together in last season, I don't even think it clicked in my head then. I'm fairly certain that maybe I mentioned it in a review and it's just been so long now that I don't remember, but I'm not trying to give myself that much credit. I think it just legitimately didn't click in my head. But anyway, the point I was making is I think Mike and Richie are kind of like that, where they both, they do what they do. They're the storytellers. Like, oh, like as Lee said, like, oh, you tell this story like a million times. Lee was kind of a dick of like, yeah, oh, you tell this story like a million times. Like everyone's heard it, but Michelle's like, oh, I haven't heard it. But it's like, oh, Lee like just kind of took the winds out of the sail and just kind of like cut the story short and told the end of it. It's like, that was a dick move. Even later on, Jimmy's like, you're kind of acting like an asshole right now too, Lee. So, but they both had that thing of like, oh yeah, they go on this diatribe about these stories because they're trying to be the life of the party, because they're trying to live it up to kind of overcompensate for what they're kind of missing on the inside. Like the void they feel, they're trying to overcompensate. And I think that's what Mike's been doing the entire episode. I mean, I think he's been doing that for a while. And we just had those moments like when he got that picture from Carmen and was kind of breaking down, what did he do? Like the moment Carmen came back, he was gone because he went off to get high. And I think, once again, everyone has their vices on how they deal with everything, because even their mom has alcohol. Like we see it throughout the episode. Natalie's like looking at one bottle and seeing that it's empty, and she looks at Carmen. Carmen kind of shrugs, like, "What are we gonna do about it?" Like while her mom was cooking other stuff, like you could tell, like Natalie was tilting the bottle over, trying to limit as much of the alcohol as she could without her mom noticing. I love. It's come up before about the facts, there being so many of them. I'm curious what went on. They referenced Natalie and was it Francine? Their sister, like something went down that they're aware of. And like Michelle was kind of dancing around it. She's like, oh, it's still about that. And kind of referencing like Francine kind of being the worst. And both Neil and his brother being like, yeah, she's good. It's like, but yeah. And it's like, no, she's not. She's the worst. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I just love how they kind of cave. But I also love, because it's like, yeah, there's just so many of it's like, how many, whoa. How many facts are there exactly? It's like, oh, well, there's this one and this one. Because they try to go to Jimmy about the baseball card route. Like, yo, we'll take this 500 that you're going to give us, and we're going to turn it into 1,500 like in 6 months. And he's like, okay, here, hold my drink, and I'm going to slap you. He's like, there, leave me alone. And they're like, yo, was that slap a good slap? Like, was that a business slap? And I love they go talking to Steven about it later on. And he's like, okay, guys, no. I'm going to give you the 500 because you guys are always so interesting. He's like, and I want updates. I'm going to call weekly and I want someone to tell me what's going on with this whole business opportunity, you know? And he's like, oh, I had this particular card. And they're like, oh my God, it was worth 125. And he's like, 125 grand? He's like, no, $125, $100. And it's like, okay. I just thought that was, I like Steven's energy, especially later on when he tried to go, I'm going to help out Donna. They're like, Michelle was like, no. Everyone's like, oh, no, go ahead, Steven. Go ahead and do it. It's like, oh, this is going to get interesting. And the moment he stepped in the kitchen, she's like, she was basically like, get the fuck out. And he was like, okay. And like, he was there to kind of console Natalie. Also, who got it rough was Pete. Poor Pete. He brought the fish and they're like, yeah, because it's 7 fishes. It's like, yeah, but that makes 8. It's like, why would you do that? He's like, oh, I couldn't show up empty-handed. I love when it's like, he felt, they made him seem like the biggest asshole in the world. I love Carmen's like, yo, what is that? And someone was like, don't tell him. It's like, well, no, what do you mean don't tell me? Stevie, what is this? And Stevie's like, okay, before I tell you, Carmen, I'm allowed to tell you, you're going to be mad, but he had the best intentions at heart. It's like, yeah, and it's like another fish dish. And he's like, are you fucking with me? Like, why are you trying to make us all assholes or something? And then Natalie came and she's like, what is that? And he's like, I'm sorry. She's like, really? He's like, I just couldn't show up empty-handed. And she tossed it outside. To be fair, she'd kind of like gotten into it with her mom too. So, and her mom yelled it. So it's like, she was already kind of pissed and stressed. And so she kind of took it out on Pete. Poor Pete. Because if you notice, he's kind of quiet, like, that was his main line of dialogue, and and he's trying to have small talk with everyone, which is so sad because Pete gets brushed aside. I think afterwards, like at that party of Jimmy's that Jimmy like had for his kids or whatever last season, they did kind of go like, oh yeah, Pete's actually kind of like, they kind of turned around on Pete, like, oh, he's not as bad, or at least Carmi did. So, but yeah, he's trying to make small talk with them. It's like, oh, there's a lot more. The lights look even different. It's like, no, they look exactly the same as last year. It's like, oh, is the Andersons still living in that corner house? No, they died. It's like, come on, guys. They love fucking with him. It's like, poor Pete. And like I said, I think he might have had a line of dialogue at the table, but he's just sitting there quiet because he's just like, I'm going to shut my mouth and just let this awkwardness kind of play out the way it is. So. We also had Richie and Mike trying to play matchmaker with Claire. The way they were kind of talking about Claire, I was like, oh, it seems like she was on the bigger side when she was younger. And it's like, yeah, they're like, oh yeah, like she's smoking hot now. So I was like, oh, interesting. Because I wonder if it's a thing of like, because the way Carmen acted around her, it's almost like he always did like her, but it's just like, he was, once again, it's like, he had brought it up, I think, last episode of when he was talking to her about he wished that she had talked to him, and it's just like, you know, or was it that she was like, I wish you had talked to me or something like that? He was like, yeah, but you were always kind of surrounded by people, and he's kind of like this socially awkward person, so he always was kind of too scared to kind of approach her when she was like surrounded by people and stuff. But they're trying to like hook him up. It's like, yo, this is what she's doing. They even brought Steven in. He's like, oh, we ran into Claire Bear. And it's like, oh, she seems really good and this and that. And because the entire time, like, Carmen's like, are you guys fucking with me? And it's like, you guys love to fuck with me, so it feels like you're fucking. They're like, no, we're just trying to hook this up. Like, why are you being such a salting? Why are you being so salty right now? It's kind of like the whole point. So. Like I said, it's just beautifully constructed of like all these little storylines, little bits happening off the side, and that everything ultimately, like I said, culminates at the dinner table. And their mom is in the kitchen. She's stressing out, and once again saying that line of, no one makes anything beautiful for me, because he's trying to see if she's okay. And she calls, she's like, just go, Michael. And he's like, "Are you sure?" And she's like, and calls him by his full name as Carmen. So it's like, okay, so it seems like in that moment she snapped out. I don't even think she reckoned. I don't know, because she did hug him and kind of seemed like she was almost about to cry. Because I think maybe she caught herself realizing like, oh, I did call you Michael, didn't I? But then it's like, because then she immediately called him by his full name. It's like, is there going to be a problem? And he's like, what? She's like, is there going to be a problem? I was like, I almost about to say, is his mom about to pop off on him or something? But then like hugged him. So I'm like, maybe she recognized it. And she's like, I know I'm being a little kooky right now. Or maybe she was completely oblivious to it. And just, I don't know. And then you had, like I said, had everything culminating where Mike and Lee went at it to the point it's like he took a fork and threw it at him. It's like, did you throw a fork at me? And everyone's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Even to the point that Richie was like, yo, Mike, you're starting to scare the normals. It's like, nah, even he was kind of getting freaked out and worried because everyone there kind of knew because Lee dropped it being like, oh, like we know you're like high on something right now. And like no one said anything because they knew like that is the case. And I think Lee just aggravated what was already kind of like bubbling beneath the surface. He did not help de-escalate that situation. And I love that. He's like, Fact, can I use your... He's like, no, are you going to use that? He's like, I'm going to use that. And he's like, let me borrow. He's like, Mike, please, I need that. It's like, please don't take his fork, Mike. And then he does it again. He's like, next time you do it, I'm going to rock you. And it's like, you're nothing. You can't complete anything. Once again, Jimmy calling both of them out, being like, Mike, you're being an asshole. But Lee, you're also being an asshole. So... and I love the whole thing of like, oh yeah, why don't you say Grace, Steven? And Steven's like, I don't want to do it. Do I have to? No, I don't want to do it. And so eventually Donna comes sit down and he does Grace because they're trying to be like, so she's like, oh, did I miss something? They're like, no, everything's fine. And so he does the Grace and it's actually really beautiful. And, you know, he's like, oh, all that Donna's done. I mean, we heard how hard she was working. He's like, I love Michelle. I'm not gay like all of you keep asking me because she even said early in the episode, Carmen's like, do you think Michelle's friend is gay? It's like, oh, friend, they're not friends. She's treating them like they're friends, but it's like, no, they're actually dating. Kind of love the whole bit about like, oh yeah, from Northern California. She's like, Northern California. And it's like, wait, he's like, yes, I told you that. That's where I lived before I met you. And then time we've been together, I never told. She's like, no, but it's like the way you said Northern California. He's like, yeah, I did say it kind of weird, didn't I? But like Fack and Richie were like, no, you said it pretty elegantly. But yeah. I love Steven doing this thing, and it's like, is he still got the fork in his hand? And Jimmy's like, sure does. It's like, cool. Because Mike's just sitting there with the fork in his hand. It's like, all right. And then Donna was having one of her moments, and then Natalie had to do with the thing of, Mom, you okay? Everyone had the reaction of Michelle put her hands in her head, and like Carmi and Mike were just like, oh, fuck, Natalie, why would you do that? And she blew up at Natalie like, you know, I fucking hate it when you do that. And she's like, I don't know if she was saying that to Carmen, but the first fuck you, because she made it specifically like, fuck you, Natalie. So I don't know if the first one was also aimed at Natalie, the one that was just a fuck you. I don't know if that was meant for just her, if that was meant for Carmen, because like Carmen's sitting right beside her. So like her mom really went in on her in that moment and left. And then, you know, the Lee and Mike thing popped off. And yeah, and then it all ends with Donna. Oh yeah, because like Michelle had added fuel to the fire. Like, oh, do I not seem like I'm okay? And it's like Michelle was like, no, you don't. And she's like, fuck you, Michelle. She's like, no, I didn't mean it like that. It's like, because I guess for Michelle, it's like she got so caught up in the moment. It was just, once again, that scene was so damn tense. No one wanted to say anything. No one knew what to do. And I think she just kind of accidentally let that slip out just because of the conversation she was having earlier with Carmen. And I mean, everyone was like, yo, she even had that bet with Neil and his brother of like, oh yeah, like how much you want to bet like Donna's going to lose it this year or something like that, you know? And that's a sad thing. Like, it was supposed to be like a effed up, jokey, dark kind of jokey thing, but now it's like, it's kind of another beast entirely when it's actually unfolding in front of you. To the point, she got in the car, drove it into the house, and like Mikey's trying to get to her, but she's locked the car door and she's laughing. It's like, Jesus, this is all kinds of fucked up. It's also interesting too, because she made that line of like, oh, maybe I should go get the gun and blow my brains out right now. No one will miss me. And I was like, that's the sad irony behind it. She's saying that, and it's actually Mike who's the one that did it. So that's actually kind of like really sad and heartbreaking. And once again, it's just like I legitimately do believe and once again, no medical evidence, but it does seem like some form of bipolar disorder. But and just in that moment of the camera kind of focusing back on Carmen as he's staring at the food, like I guess one of the forks that which is so interesting too, because he's actually the one that prepared the fork, so that feels a little interesting too, because at the beginning his mom asked him to do something with the forks and he was kind of like wrapping them in the napkins, kind of like in a very like restaurant way, but she was just kind of like, because he was handling the silverware, specifically the forks, I think all the silverware, but definitely the forks, and it's just like it landed in one of the dishes and he was just like staring at it, and then we saw Natalie kind of staring for it, and it's almost like this moment of she was kind of like flabbergasted, but then like this like immediately like it's almost like she shut down because her expression kind of goes blank. So it's just, and that's the end of the episode. And I love the way the episode's designed. And maybe it was my imagination, but don't it seem like there was kind of almost like this aged filter put on the entire episode? Because I think it was almost meant to be shown like, oh, this is like a home movie. And it's like, oh, here's the Bizzardos. Oh God, I'm butchering their names. The Brazzados. That's the family name, and it's like, oh, here's the Brazzados, and here's everyone that played said members is the Brazzado family as themselves, the Brazzado family. So I love it was meant to be like, hey, this is a home movie situation. Once again, it's so wild that this was a wild hour episode, because I once again wasn't going into this expecting this episode to be as long as it is, and I do believe that this is the most chaotic thing we've seen so far in the show. Just the claustrophobic nature of this show heightened up into such an explosive thing, which the show's done in episodes before as well, but this one is just kind of like, you're just like waiting for shit to hit the fan, and like I said, it finally just, everything implodes on itself in the end, so it just makes it sad, because we don't know where the rest of the family kind of ends up, like we don't know where Michelle and Steven are, or, I mean, maybe some of these family members were mentioned before and I'm just not remembering, but we know what the future holds for Carmen, for Mike, for Natalie, which we finally also got to learn, which apparently she tells everyone this story, or at least their mom does, why she got the name Sugar is because she put she was helping with gravy one time, she ended up making the mistake of putting sugar in it instead of salt. And that's kind of been lorded over her head the entire time. Which I love Jimmy being like, hey, I've never heard this story. And he's like, oh, I'm glad I got to know the story, kind of be a part of all this. So, wild episode. I'm very, very excited to see where the next episode takes us. Like I said, I think next episode, based on hearing the way Mark Bernardin talked about it, without talking to spoilers, but I think next, because I brought this up in the previous review, I think that's going to be the Richie episode. So that's going to be an interesting parallel of what this episode was versus like what Richie's trying to do and who's trying to be present day. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.